Do you need cash? Do you want to consolidate debt? Premier Credit can help. They provide quick and confidential loans for any reason. Their service is same day, and most loans are approved within minutes. You can apply in person or by the phone. Their experienced and knowledgeable loan professionals will leave you feeling confident that your loan is being properly handled in a secure manner. Premier Credit can be reached at 225-667-8100, or you can email WeSayYes@premiercredit.com, or stop by and spin the wheel at 139 Del Norte Avenue in Denham Springs. They're open Monday through Friday from 8:30 a.m. to 5:30 p.m. and are a proud sponsor of Local Leaders, the podcast.
Hi, I'm Tricia Johnston, residential realtor with LeAnn Blum with your real estate tip of the week. Today, I'm answering a popular question: what things should a buyer avoid doing? I have a list that I provide to my buyer clients, but a few of those things are: don't make any major new purchases such as a vehicle, furniture, or appliances. Don't change jobs or banks. Don't co-sign on a loan for anyone. Don't make any late bill payments, and don't take out any new credit, such as a personal loan, a payday loan, or opening a new credit card. These things can negatively affect your credit score or your debt-to-income ratio and prevent you from being able to buy a new home. If you have questions about this or anything else, please don't hesitate to reach out to me, and I'll be happy to help. I'm Tricia Johnston with LeAnn Blum, and I'll be back here again next week with another real estate tip of the week for you.
McHugh David, how are you, sir?
I'm good. It feels a little weird to be on this side of the camera. Usually I'm sitting in the seat over there, but I am good today. Thanks for having me.
Oh, no problem at all. You are definitely playing role reversal with me. So you're used to the one doing the interviews, and now you're the interviewee. And the reason that I decided I wanted to interview you and bugged you so much about it is I find your life to be absolutely amazing, even though it's your life. And I know looking out on the other side of the lens or the microphone or whatever, you don't see that because it's your life and you live it every day. But you definitely have a very interesting life, being that you are the newspaper for Livingston Parish.
Yeah, it is interesting. It's interesting times, and it keeps me busy, very busy. And it's interesting in that things have changed a lot with delivering news, and there's still a lot of people who like to read the newspaper, but there are a lot of people who like to get their news in a variety of different ways. Here's one of them. So I appreciate you having me on, and it's a huge role reversal. I don't think I've ever been interviewed. Yeah. So I am a little nervous. I'm not entirely sure what you're going to ask.
Hey, if anything, I'm a trendsetter. And the interesting thing that maybe the viewers that have been viewing a lot of my podcasts lately will notice is there's no computer here today. The reason there's no computer is I know McHugh pretty well, so I didn't have to make notes like I normally do with some of my guests to kind of know what I'm going to ask them. We talk a lot and those sort of things, so I knew this was going to be an easier podcast than normal, and I wanted to challenge myself a little bit and not have my I guess you could call it my safety net there that I could refer to. I'm trying to get a little bit better at just talking, which is what I want to do in my podcast. So with you, what makes you so interesting is you grew up literally in the news business.
I did.
A lot of people, well, I would say one thing that you do very well is you tell people stories very well. The interesting thing about that is you've never really told your story. I mean, at least not through a podcast. You spend your life getting other folks' name out there in society, so to speak, and you've never, maybe those people don't know as much about who you are and who you are maybe outside of the newspaper, where, you know, what was it like to grow up being the paper in Livingston Parish and being surrounded by that? I would imagine it was an interesting thing. So we're going to kind of start at the beginning with you, and I don't mean the very beginning, like the second you popped out or anything, but we're gonna start in your young life. So tell me a little bit about the history of the paper. I know your dad purchased the paper originally, and kind of give me the backstory on that.
Okay, so the paper was actually established by a man named George Minton in 1898. An interesting guy, very much an entrepreneur. He was from the Northeast. He moved down here, college educated, and he actually ended up starting a college here, a bank here, which is the first bank of Livingston, actually, which I believe now has ended up as Whitney Bank. And he also started the paper. My grandfather in 1967 purchased the paper, and he did so on a napkin at Jamanco's Italian restaurant on Government Street. So there's going to be a lot of people that's going to be a sort of like, whoa, I've eaten at Jamanco's. I had no idea.
I have as well.
And so Jamanco's is, of course, no longer there. It's torn down. But he bought it in 67. And then almost 10 years later to the day, he died of a massive heart attack on the golf course, Baton Rouge Country Club. And my dad at the time was a lawyer at the Public Service Commission. They are the people who regulate your utility rates, just a by the way. And Monday morning, they blitzed everything through the funeral and all that. And my dad showed up Monday morning and said, "You all don't leave. You all still have a job. I'm gonna make this work." Now, luckily for my dad, he had been doing a lot of the books for his dad for the paper, so he had a pretty good idea of how it worked. And he came in, he walked downtown Denham Springs back in the day to do sales calls. So he was actually a salesperson. He eventually started his own column. He called it Ways and Means, which is, by the way, usually the committees both at the state legislature and the national congressional body, I guess you call it, they determine your taxes. So he loved to talk about politics and taxes. He considered, a lot of people say death and taxes are the perennial, will never disappear. For him, it was politics and taxes. But, his politics were a little different than most. He was not ideological, and I like to think that he and I are kind of the same cloth on that one. I mean, there's left politics, right politics, but in the end, everybody's got to kind of play the same game to try to get what they want. So, he had that column, and slowly but steadily, he grew. He was the president of the Louisiana Press Association. I'm currently the secretary treasurer. And he was actually the first and only Louisiana publisher to be named president of the National Newspaper Association. Wow. So yeah, there were. It was very interesting. Late in his career, we went to an NNA convention, and a gentleman that I had never met before in my life, who was a publisher in Arizona, was talking to me. And my dad had two friends, both of whom were from Colorado, and all three of them were dubbed the godfathers of the newspaper business. It was very interesting. And this guy said it to me, and I'm sitting there thinking, that's my dad. I argue with that guy every day. Right. But, especially legislatively, my dad was a powerhouse. And, he passed away in 2015 of cancer. And I took over then. But I guess if you're talking about what came before that, I went to SwanE in Tennessee. I studied economics. And I came home and I actually did a couple of businesses with my mom before I got involved full time at the paper. I actually ran a prison manufacturing shop for disposable garments for a while. That was one of our businesses. It was pretty wild. And, there was no internet or anything. So I had to bring a book, and I would go sit in this secure office, and I'd have to watch these guys and then interact with my plant manager. And I did that for 10 hours a day for 2 months. Wow. And it was pretty wild. And, they had two guards in there because we had everything from just blue collar type guys to, we had a couple of pretty high level felons in there as well. So it was different.
Sure. It definitely was. And keeping on that point, but kind of reversing a little bit. So you grew up with a dad who was very active in the community from a standpoint of, I don't know what the right word would be exactly, but he was someone who kind of everybody knew. I mean, this was a guy that especially with a small town paper, I would imagine, was the guy you went to, when you wanted to get things out, and and I'm not talking just advertising. Maybe it was something going on in the community that you wanted to shed light on. Your dad would be the one that they would go to. So you're let's take you back maybe to high school age, and I'm sure you're observing a lot of this. I picture maybe you hanging around the office and kind of these figures coming in that were well-known people that, it was common for them to come in and hey, McHugh, where's your dad? Kind of thing. Tell me how that was, kind of sitting in on maybe some of those meetings or hearing discussions in the library or whatever. How was that?
So, first and foremost, my dad owning the local paper, it definitely affected my early life because first and foremost, Butch Wax was the principal of Denham Springs High School and wanted nothing to do with me. And not necessarily because he knew me, but just because my dad was who he was, and my parents agreed with him. Yeah. And so I did not go to high school here.
Yeah. Where did you go to high school?
I went to Episcopal.
Okay.
In Baton Rouge.
So you were a smart kid.
I was the Livingston Parish kid at Episcopal. Let's put it that way. And I learned how to hold my own, I suppose you could say. Sure. But starting at about age 9, and I hope nobody from the Department of Labor is listening to this, I started working here. I was sweeping the back shop. I was a janitor. And I grew up in this building. I worked here just about every summer until I got older. I could drive. And then I was assistant with the press. And then I started doing reporting when I was about 18. And I did, while I was in high school, I was around my dad and Mike Doty, who was our longtime editor. Went to a lot of football games with them and got to hear them talk about, a lot of things that was going on, especially here locally, and even going back before I was 9, when I was younger, both my mother and father were back-to-back board chairmen for the chamber, actually.
Really?
And yes. Yeah. Yeah. One of my first real vivid memories was going to clean up trash at the Range Avenue and I-12 intersection. Of course, on the Range side, not on I-12. Sure. And being yelled at because I was not standing next to my mother because it was very dangerous. But it was, it was a big deal. Wanting to clean up, and now we have with COVID, things have changed a little bit. But, 10th day of the month, trying to pick up a little trash. We know that trash affects drainage, so some early efforts there. My dad was also on the LEDC board, economic development. Yeah. So I did. I grew up here. I was introduced to a lot of politics here. I was introduced to a lot of interesting people who have come through here. Of course, I went to college elsewhere. I went to SwanEe in Tennessee. Didn't experience a lot of that during that time. I was usually gone during election season, that kind of thing. I worked here over the summers and during the Christmas holiday.
Sure.
But a lot of it was very interesting. My first sort of political foray, I tell this story a lot. I was sitting at the kitchen table, and this was the mid-'90s, and my dad asked me what I thought about Bill Clinton, and I'm about 10, right? 9, 10 years old, something like that. And I said, well, he seems pretty cool. He plays the sax, and my dad banged the table and he's like, what have I spent all this money on? That's all you know? What do you think about his policies? What do you think? And he was mad, he's generally, so I learned my lesson from
Stephanie Berthelot and the crew at SR Enterprise can handle it all, from sheetrock to texture to paint. Give Stephanie a call at 504-432-9284. SR Enterprise, where they spread the paint and you spread the word.
And I needed to do better, but moving into the 2000s, it was very interesting to be involved here during that time because there was a huge culmination, especially in the Denham Springs area, of these guys who had been in office since about the late 80s, and they had been in office with my dad here as publisher and Mike Doty as editor. And there was a lot of things that they had worked towards, Bass Pro, Jubin intersection for I-12. One of the very interesting things outside of Denham Springs was moving to a parish council out away from a police jury.
Sure.
Huge change there. So, I was a snot-nosed kid watching all this happen, but I was glad to have been involved because I can really think back on it and think about what was happening at the time. At the time, I did not understand the gravity of it. Now I do. It was a huge change. I mean, we talk about it all the time. Things like, teacher pay surpassing Baton Rouge was a huge change here in Livingston Parish. That Bass Pro, another one we already talked about. Katrina changed the face of this parish. Moving all the way up to the Great Flood. And I mean, I've given that presentation in the chamber, but I've been involved sort of in the telling of the story of a lot of these things as they're happening, and pretty lucky to be in that situation, to be quite honest with you.
Yes, and I would agree. Of course, me personally, I'm a huge history guy, historical, everything from furniture to articles, things like that. One of the things that I have an enormous jealousy of you for is you have a catalog here of papers that span a long way back. And I'm thinking, wow, if that were me, I would probably spend all day reading in an office from beginning to end. Now, during the flood, did you lose any of that stuff, any of those catalogs of papers that you have binded up now? Do you still have all of those? Or
we have most of them. We lost about 15 years from about, actually, we're pretty good up until about 2001. And we lost some of 2001 up to 2014. So not too bad. The nice thing is LSU has all of those copies digitized, as does the Livingston Parish Library.
Really?
So they weren't lost. And we kept, we have them going back to, actually, there's one sitting on the table right over there that's 1932. That's so awesome. I'm waiting to get a quote back to rebind it. It a little pricey. Yeah. It is old. So it requires a lot of extra care. But that's one of our oldest ones.
That's pretty neat. And yeah, it's an expansive library you have and really neat. Now we're going to get back to you a little bit. So in high school, you were an athlete.
I was.
You played guard?
No, I was the single back in a triple option.
Wow. Yeah. You were the power.
Yeah.
I mean, let's be honest. So you're a lot of people might be surprised to know you're a pretty big sports guy. You love sports.
I have my moments. Yes.
Yeah. And it's interesting from standing on the outside and knowing you don't mention it a whole lot, but you're a pretty big sports guy. And the good thing about newspaper guys is they have opinions. They just don't speak them a lot. They're very smart about that. One of the things that maybe a lot of people can work on is they might voice their opinion a little bit too much, but newspaper people are very good about kind of, keeping that sort of thing to themselves, maybe. And that's a good thing. That's a good quality to have that a lot of people maybe should work on in their life. Sometimes we get a little bit too crazy on the Livingston rants and raves and things like that. It seems like there's a lot more rants than raves, just saying. So yeah, kudos to you for being able to kind of hold that opinion back, at least from the public,
It was how I was raised in this business. It's my business to tell the story. It was very interesting, actually, a recent event. There is a statewide recall effort for the governor. Whether or not it'll be successful, that's not my job. My job is to say, well, they're having some petition rallies here in Livingston Parish. It's something that's happening. It's part of the historical record of this parish. It's my job to report it. Whether or not I agree with them or not is irrelevant.
Yeah.
And, telling the facts is what is important. And I know that the news business, from an ideological standpoint, a lot of people have moved away from that. They consider it boring. And it's unfortunate because a lot of times what people don't understand is that journalism is just as much of a grind as anything else. you can dig and dig and dig. And what they always say is anybody that's digging for something specific, they'll find it. They may not actually find it, but they're going to find a way to say that it's right. And that's not exactly what we do. I mean, our job is to go to the meetings, talk to these guys, see as these things progress. Because, yeah, is there some politics going on in the background? Absolutely. But in the end, the facts will roll out. And a lot of times it's just about sticking with that story and not being, I guess, not rushing it to fruition. And a lot of times it takes a lot of patience. I don't mind telling you.
It really does. And you know, the national media, you know, you almost wish that everybody had that same attitude, you know, and we don't get political on this show, and I'm going to stay away from getting political, but there has been sort of an attack on the press from a national level that their opinions are sort of getting out there a little more than maybe they should, and everybody can kind of figure out what I'm talking about there, whether it's right or wrong, whether that, you know, true or false. There is a perception from a national media perspective that maybe they're injecting too much of their own opinions or their own politics into what they're reporting. So from a standpoint of a local level, you are someone that I would say has really stayed away from that. Like you just said, it's kind of not your job to go out there and give your opinion. Your job is to tell the story. Now, there is an opinion article, and that's a great thing for anybody in the press, because then you can kind of say your opinion. It's an opinion article. It's your opinion. People don't have to agree with it. I tend to agree with a lot of things you write in those opinion articles. And I'm glad that those sort of things exist. But I did want to mention, you know, a little bit about what you just said, and that is that I totally agree with that. I think that the press's, main responsibility is to report the facts. And you do a good job of sticking to that. So that's a feather in your cap. So we talked a little bit about athletics, and you were pretty successful at Episcopal. Now, Episcopal in your day was a power horse. They were a good team. I remember those days. Parkview was good. Episcopal was good. Mm-hmm. I actually grew up right across the street from Episcopal High School, so okay. I was right there around it, and very familiar with Episcopal. Now, my years that I grew up in high school, they were horrible. You know, you went there to learn. You didn't go there to play football. But somewhere along the line, smart kids figured out how to play football, and you did pretty well there. Tell us a little bit about your high school record in high school as far as Episcopal was concerned.
So my freshman year, actually, in football, we broke the 0-32 record that we had mounted. It was actually a pretty big deal. We went 5-5 that year, but I think for those seniors outgoing, that was, I mean, we had been very successful in 7th and 8th grade, and I come in there. And I played fullback as a freshman and a sophomore. I was a fullback, true fullback. We were in an I formation at that point. And I remember playing against some really big guys. And I was pretty beat up after that game. And I just remember some of those seniors coming and giving me a hug and saying, man, you just don't know. You just don't know what it's like for you to come out here and give it your all. And we won this game. We won pretty big too. And we were playing a sister school out of New Orleans, and we went 5-5 that year, and again broke that 0-32 record. Going forward, I actually broke my leg about halfway through my sophomore season. Didn't really get to play a whole lot, and it kind of messed up the rest of my year athletically. I was a football player, a power lifter, and a baseball and track person. Both my spring sports were affected between my sophomore and junior year. I was playing summer ball, and I was a pitcher as well as third base and catcher. I played all the beefy positions, and I actually took lessons, and Livingston Parish people know all about this. I took lessons from Beetle Bailey. He lived behind what is now All-Star Dodge, Skate Galaxy. There it is. Used to be over there. And I took pitching lessons from him, and I was playing summer ball, and we were playing, I was in the JV team between sophomore and junior year, and we were playing some kids from Sandoval. and they were very good at baseball. They were a little older than us, but I had a wicked curve, and I dropped a few too many that day and blew my arm out. And my dad and I decided that I would stick with football and powerlifting, and that would be that. Yeah. And I never probably could have had Tommy John surgery and tried to play baseball again, just never did. It, of course, affected track because, it's my throwing arm. I was a shot putter. Didn't really have a whole lot of strength after that. So mostly was on the team as sort of a ceremonial thing. Of course, Coach Dupe there is very good. And he always said, well, if you can go throw in place and get us points, it's worth it. And I mean, I would, I'd get like 5th or 6th and get a point or two. Sure. And I contributed, right?
Yeah.
So moving forward, I stuck with football and powerlifting. My senior year, I placed first in 2A in my weight class in powerlifting. I lifted way more than I should have and got worse in college about that. And my claim to fame, I guess you can say, as I tell people, is I was second string all district running back behind Triton Holiday. Yeah. So, I tell
it's not too bad.
Well, a lot of people are like second string, and then I say behind Triton Holiday, and they're like, oh, okay, cool. So yeah, I mean, it was. If anybody has ever watched Springfield's offense here in Livingston Parish, it was the same thing. We ran the triple option, and I got beat up a lot.
Yeah.
I also like to tell people for homecoming. I was taking the head cheerleader, and I also took the ACT that morning. I had a black eye, a busted lip, and a bruise on my arm about this big. And I remember walking up to take the SAT that morning, my best score, by the way. And she was like, what the hell's wrong with you? I was like, well, this is a great start to this day. We did win. And it was in the rain, but it was that was an interesting weekend. But yeah, and so those. Again, I didn't really didn't really get to finish my baseball career. My junior year, Episcopal did win the state championship.
Yep.
So I missed out on that. But I was very proud of those guys. They worked hard. And,
sure they did.
And we had a really, really good class above us, actually. They were very good at baseball. And then track was, of course, Coach Dupe. I mean, in cross country, Coach Duplichin. In cross country and track, just a great coach, and consistent. We're gonna compete on a championship level every year. So I was lucky to go to Episcopal during that time. I learned a lot. I got picked on a lot right up until I pushed back, and then that would stop. And so anyway, I graduated from Episcopal. It was actually a very interesting story. I had been to, this was back when Saban was at LSU, and I had gone to one of the camps, and the guy was very frank with me. He said, if you were about 5 inches taller, you could play here and play fullback, but you aren't big enough. You're just not tall enough. Okay. So about 3 weeks later, a guy from SWANee, and I've never heard of SWANee. I have no idea what this guy's talking about.
I only know the song.
Yeah.
Swanee River.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. And I didn't even know that. Okay.
Triton HealthCare, located at 8128 Florida Boulevard in Denham Springs, offers a wide range of physical therapy services for a number of chronic and acute ailments. Whether it's sports injuries, injuries from accidents, or neurological disorders, Triton HealthCare can take care of it. They offer post-surgery rehab services, which is a specialized sports medicine program, and massage, as well as occupational and speech language therapies. So check out Triton HealthCare, who has been an active part of the Livingston Parish community since 1999 and are dedicated to providing the very best and rehabilitative care to all Livingston Parish residents. They can be reached at 225-791-8666, and they are a proud sponsor of Local Leaders, the podcast.
Okay, so I am on a couch in our student center at school, and this guy walks up. He is actually a graduate of Episcopal about 15 years before me, and he knew our head coach. And I mean, I'm like literally laying on a couch, I mean, I have not exercised since the season ended. We're about 2 weeks after powerlifting season had ended. And I mean, I'm going to LSU, and he said, how would you like to play football? I was like, I played football. What do you mean? And he was like, play Division III football. There's no scholarships or anything. You're just playing for love of the game. I said, sure. I guess. So, they had space and, because they could only accept so many kids. And so I visited Sewanee in Tennessee, and it's beautiful. It's on top of a mountain about halfway in between Chattanooga and Nashville. And my dad decided, well, before we jump on that, let's go to Rhodes in Memphis, actually, where Farrell Calhoun is, which is a sister school. And same conference also. And let's go to Millsaps in Jackson, Mississippi, and visit them. And let's go to Trinity in San Antonio and visit them. Millsaps wasn't really a fit. Trinity, I was not from Texas, so they put me in the same dorm room as a kid from the state of Washington. If that'll tell you anything about how they felt about outsiders, I mean, I was from the state next door. Yeah. And I was rooming with the guy from Washington State. And that just didn't work out. I mean, when you looked at their depth chart, it was all Texas kids. And so that didn't work out. I was actually decided I was going to Rhodes. I did. I was going to Rhodes. They lost my paperwork. No joke.
Wow.
They lost my paperwork. And the coach called my mom and said, we lost his paperwork. Will you please redo it? Well, that day, my acceptance letter from Sewanee came in. And I called and said, I'm coming to Sewanee.
That's crazy. I mean, that totally changed your college career just by losing some paperwork. You ended up at a totally different college. It's interesting.
Well, and I mean, very interesting part about it is, Memphis is a 40-minute air flight or, 4.5, 5 hour drive. Sewanee, I mean, if you went to Nashville, you had to fly through Memphis to Baton Rouge, or you drove. And I drove a lot. And it was 9 hours by yourself. And this was before smartphones. I had an iPod. Okay. Yeah. I mean, I had an iPod, or I had my CDs, so I listened to a lot of audiobooks, listened to a lot of music on my iPod, the same music over and over and over again. And it was very interesting. It was a very interesting time. And I actually ended up spending a lot of time on Sewanee's campus, just, not by myself. A lot of people stayed on campus, but I didn't come home a lot because I dreaded that drive. And so it did. I mean, when you're talking about residual effects, it affected me in a lot of different ways. I mean, I know we're going to talk about it later, but my business partner for Southern Lighting Solutions, I mean, we had kind of met each other and knew each other before that, but he came to Sewanee to study abroad for a little while. Several of my best friends, I still talk to them every day. Currently playing fantasy football with them. I still have a lot of these memories and a lot of these friends, and I was very lucky to be able to go to a school like that. Absolutely lucky, totally blessed.
Agreed. And it's interesting, the point you just brought up, and I want to talk about that for a second. So I have been someone that in the past, I look back, I'll look back on aspects of my life and I'll say, if I wouldn't have done this, I wouldn't have gotten this. For example, you just made a good point that a lot of your friends, your business partner, had that paperwork not been lost, you wouldn't have went to Sewanee. Had you not went to Sewanee, you may not have met your business partner. So it's funny how life ties in. I'll give you a good example. Me personally, I was thinking about this the other day. I met my wife at AAA Bar and Grill. She's going to kill me for saying this. Hey, you told people I met you at a bar. Yes, I met her at a bar at AAA Bar and Grill. I think I was 21 at the time or so. And we met there. But the whole point of the matter is I didn't really go there a whole lot. I met her that night. Had I not met her that night, had I decided not to go because I almost didn't go, I would not have married her. I would not have had my kids that I have now. And this is like one moment in time. I'm getting really deep for you folks out there right now. But, when you look back, it's funny how decisions we make that we think are just horrible at the time. Oh, my gosh, I can't believe they lost my paperwork. I was going to go to school at Rhodes, and it may have been the best thing that ever happened to you. Sure. To where, one day you may want to send them a thank you for losing my paperwork, because had you found my paperwork, I never would have met this guy who led me to this business or whatever. So just very interesting. And I'm curious how many people out there do look back and say, man, if it wasn't for that one event, my whole life could have been completely different. I find those things very interesting. So we're going to fast forward now. You go through school, and what did you graduate in at SWANE?
I have a degree in economics.
Economics.
With a minor in business.
Yeah, smart guy. Did I mention that? He's very smart. So you come back home. You come back to Denham Springs, Louisiana, Livingston Parish, and now you got to figure out what you want to do in life, and I guess get a job and those sort of things. Tell me about that part.
So one of the interesting things about that degree is I got to study why I wasn't going to get a job coming out of college. And, we're right in the middle of the financial crisis. And, I spoke to my dad, and we've discussed before just a few minutes ago about how he was politically connected. And, he said, well, I can get you a job as, a congressional or senatorial aide up in D.C. Oh, cool. So what's that entail? Well, you're going to live in an apartment with about 6 other dudes. And I was like, no, absolutely not. I am not interested in that. And so we kept talking, and I visited with a few people. And I mean, we kind of blitzed through this because I came home in May, right? Graduated about May 12th of 2009. Came home after deciding DC was not for me. I also could have gone to Nashville and gotten a teller job at a bank part-time, and I also would have lived with 5 other gentlemen, and I wasn't going to do that either. And so, which was about an hour away from school. So I came back here, and, we were talking through it. Actually, you've had Lori Johnston on the show. I went to Gulfport to interview for their bank manager program back when they were Hancock.
Yep.
And I was very interested. It seemed like a good program, and it was about a 2-year program, and they put you up. You don't get paid much, but most programs like that, that's how they work.
Sure.
When they, and then I asked, well, where can I go? And they say, well, where we put you.
Yeah, you don't get a choice.
No. Look, we're putting you through this program. We're going to give you a job. We're paying you all this per diem. You're going to go where we put you. And I was like, Dad, we're leaving. And a lot of people are going to say, well, this all sounds very selfish, but I could not imagine myself as sort of the branch manager in, Paducah, Kentucky or something like that. I just couldn't, I just wasn't going to roll the dice like that. So I came back and my mother was involved in a disposable garment business. So we sold a lot to hospitals and actually, believe it or not, nuke facilities. So when they go in and clean out the rods and things like that, the actual place where the reaction occurs, they have to clean that out and clean it of radiation and grind, because it's very sensitive.
Sure.
We sold them suits that were radiation. They repelled radiation. And yeah, I know. It was wild. When she's sitting there explaining this to me, I'm like, what? Because I was just used to selling scrubs to hospitals, right? I bounced around from hospital to hospital, asking about orders, trying to get new customers, that kind of thing. And, this was the first order that came in. I'm sitting there asking her about it. And I'm like, what is this? And she said, oh, that's our nuke suit. And she started describing it to me. I'm like, what? And so we did. We sold that. But eventually, we and it was very interesting too. We got to go to a couple of conferences in California and Miami, international conferences. I got to feel about that big, and but it was interesting because we met. It was actually a stroke of luck. We met a Chinese company at the Miami conference that eventually called and said, look, we know that this company, also Chinese, is about to start selling these goods to the Germans who are going to knock you out. We will buy your company and go into competition with them. And we said, that's fine. When somebody lays that out for you, it's because my mom had been through a similar situation when 96 won the river. She started that. And when Bill Clinton basically went to the FCC and knocked out the ability for companies to have a monopoly on radio broadcast. Folks from Texas came in with money and basically said, either you can sell us the radio station or we will start one and run you out of, and just feed it money until we run you out of business. So she knew how that worked. And, she and I sat down, we talked about it, and she was like, we're going to sell. We're going to get out of this. I said, okay. And we moved into an antique publication that was actually through the paper. My mom and dad had bought it, and it was called the Antiques Gazette. We ran it out of a little yellow house over there on Range Avenue and 210 North Range. And we did that for about 2 years. And we had there was a girl that worked with us, Tricia, and she was a salesperson. I was a salesperson. I also did some layout, and Mom was the publisher. And that was very interesting. That was the first time that I sort of learned or got to apply my sort of economies of scale, because especially coming out of the Great Recession, antique businesses didn't have a whole lot of money. I mean, they were still generating money. It was still a lucrative business model. But what's that? It's okay. That's fine.
Are you going to edit that out?
Yes, I will. No. It's fine. I'll edit that out.
Okay.
By the way, for those watching, my dearly beloved is recording for us since I'm sitting over here. At any rate, antique businesses didn't have a whole lot of money for advertising. So we actually, I had a sales territory from Houston to Destin, including New Orleans. And Tricia and I split it up, and we ran all over, and we even went to this antique conference that was in Brenham, Texas, which is actually where they make Bluebell ice cream. And we'd go up there once a year to bring a bunch of stacks of papers and visit with people, and some of them advertised with us. Eventually, that just wasn't very lucrative. We sold that as well, and that's when and lo and behold, that's where the story ends, and that's where McHugh full time at the newspaper begins.
Yeah.
So at that point, I walk in and I'm talking, I'm kind of trying to get a feel for people in the community, what they're looking for, how I can help. So my dad brings me in to redo the website and kind of boost our social media.
And before you get in any further on that, because I want to bring up this point. So, here's the thing with papers, from someone that just kind of knows this just from being alive and paying attention. But with newspapers, there was advertising has certainly changed during this point in time when you've went through college, you're kind of out there on the road, you're doing things with other businesses that you own, and then all of a sudden now you're back to the paper. But advertising has totally changed. Now you have websites. You have, you said it earlier. I would come home from college and I would listen to CDs and I would have an iPod. Well, just a few short years later, we have iPhones, CDs. What are you talking about, CDs? We have Spotify, we have YouTube, we have all these things. So of course, businesses, especially a paper, they had to adjust. Mm-hmm. It was, websites in the mid 90s were common, but they were very antiquated compared to today's standards. I mean, you didn't have videos on them. You didn't have, basically it was a banner that said the Livingston Parish News or whatever business it was, and maybe your address and phone number, and that was your website. It was one page, or two pages. Maybe if you had a ton of money and you were one of these big companies, you had several pages. But so you come back and you get home, you do all these other businesses, you end up selling some, or your family ends up selling some businesses to get out before big giant conglomerates basically pushed you out. And at that point, your dad says, we need to work on some websites here because times are changing, as they would say.
So yeah, and it was interesting. That seems to be what a lot of folks in my demographic were doing. They were coming back and they were like, well, we need social media and website help. Well, okay, we'll start there. And it was, one of the sort of, but real quick side comment, real quick. Cell phone service on the mountain, which is where Swanee was terrible. So I didn't know anything about iPhones or any of that until I came back home, and all of a sudden all my friends have iPhones. They're like, check this out. I mean, you didn't have the cell phone signal to run them on the mountain. So right. Everybody had like a flip phone, to stand outside and call home if you needed to. So I was introduced to that late and trying to figure that out. And yeah, I came back and we went through those businesses, and then my dad was like, well, y'all had a good website for that and a good website for that. We want a website for this. And we had one, and what just hadn't been happening was nobody was keeping up with the salesperson from the company's called Town News. And they had actually several template upgrades. So I started working with them on doing a template upgrade for our website. And about a year and a half after that, my dad said, well, we can start charging for this. We can put up a paywall. One of the cardinal sins for most newspapers is, is still under debate to this day, is the effectiveness of a paywall. We have a hybrid model here. There's some stuff that's free. There's some stuff that's paid. Some people do full paywalls. There's wide variety. For us, the original one that came out in 2012, and my dad and I fought a lot about this. I was like, well, look, we have regular video and digital ad or display ad placements. Let's try that first. No, we tried that. We're going to put a paywall. And I mean, for about 3 months, it was about twice a week. Office would clear because he and I were about to get into it.
LeAnn's Flooring by Design, conveniently located on Florida Boulevard in Denham Springs. LeAnn can service all of your flooring needs. Give them a call for an appointment at 523-7004. At LeAnn's Flooring by Design, they stand behind everything you walk on.
Eventually, you come to learn, well, he's the one that signs the paychecks. So
He's the boss.
Yeah, you got to go along with it. You fought the good fight. So we put it up, moderate success. I mean, it was not exactly the failure I thought it would be, but it wasn't a huge success because the cardinal sin of newspapers was we did not have the same kind of advertising medium that translated like, say, TV stations, right? You just take the video ad and instead of it being on the TV, it's on the computer or the phone. That's easy. When you're talking about delivering on display, that's different. It's different metrics. It's harder.
And I would caveat to that, not to interrupt you, but I would caveat to that also that this is still 2012-ish. You're talking a totally different time frame than today. So there was still a lot of active TV advertising at that time.
Absolutely.
People still watched the TV. DVR wasn't as popular then as it is now, to the point that people really fast forward those commercials. So, in a way, I can see that kind of struggling just from the aspect of people haven't caught up with the technology yet. They were still figuring out, in 2012 that ads were a good place to have placements on. The web just wasn't as popular. It was popular, but it wasn't nowhere near today. I mean, today, in my opinion, computer advertising, whether it be podcast or the World Wide Web or on a website, far surpass television advertising. That's just my opinion. But I don't know a whole lot of people that watch television anymore. Even when they do, they're watching YouTube TV and watching local stations on there and things like that in their DVR. And so this is my opinion, but I do kind of see where that would only be a moderate success at that point in time.
Sure. And it was because so many people were used to still getting that for free. Yeah. And Facebook had just started to delve into, not necessarily Facebook, but the people that used Facebook were just starting to delve into news and stuff being shared there, people sharing community news and that kind of thing. So it was a wild, wild west kind of time. And trying to find, the best way to deliver the advertising was very difficult. It's something that we're still working on. We still study metrics. I'm looking at my Facebook metrics, my website metrics, my Instagram metrics all the time because they're constantly shifting. And you know about that. You've talked about that in the past. When you and I did a podcast, actually, I was interviewing you. And we were talking about, dealing with social media and that kind of thing. So we're still working on that to this day. That was 8 years ago, and we're still studying it, still changing our approach.
And it changes, one thing about social media advertising or social media in general is it changes daily. The way in which you approach it changes daily. There are analytics involved that we've talked about before, but we're going to talk about a little bit here. There's a lot of analytics involved in algorithms in how your message is put out on social media. So if you're a podcaster, you've really got to kind of understand algorithms, and you've got to understand there are certain ways in which you even verbalize things that will cause it to go up a feed or down a feed, and feeds are everything to the social media podcaster because that is the people that actually see it. That, in the end, Facebook, Instagram, YouTube, they really control everything because they have the ability to make everybody see you, and they have the ability to make no one see you. So they are kind of the evil general up there that kind of controls it. So from a podcaster standpoint, it is a constant education.
Right.
Would you agree with that?
Absolutely. And I mean, it's very interesting because in a lot of cases, I don't think a lot of end consumers understand how much those folks control what you see. And we deal with that a lot. We'll have a lot of people share an advocate article that's dealing with the same thing that we were dealing with that was shared maybe 3 days after the event, whereas maybe myself or David Gray got it out the night of. They just never saw it. And they'll say, well, you didn't cover that. And I'll say, well, you can check the website, which is when we get into that with a lot of people, I never saw it on Facebook. I would invite you to check our website daily. We update it daily. We have constant stories coming out, and some national, some state, and some local. And we're always trying to keep that site updated because we cannot control that. I mean, there are certain things you can do to help yourself with the algorithm, but in the end, we have no control.
Absolutely. And from the reader's standpoint, so as you just said, people were saying, well, you didn't put the article out. Here's the thing. If you follow the Livingston Parish News on Facebook, and let's say you only like their post every now and again, maybe it's something you actually like and you hit the like button, but let's say you're someone like me who wants to see that news every day. I will intentionally like, the article, whether it's something I'm generally interested in or not. And the reason that I do that is Facebook says, oh, Jim likes to see the Livingston Parish News. We're going to continue to show that on his feed. If I went a couple of weeks and I did not like any Livingston Parish News post at all, guess what? All of a sudden, it's going to stop showing me that on the feed. That is a fact. And I guarantee you, I want to invite all the listeners and viewers right now, try this for yourself. Pick a person that you don't necessarily maybe hit the like button all the time for. Start hitting it all the time and watch. You will see their post a lot more frequently. There's a lot of things I post. Some people see, some people don't, but they're there. If you go to my page, you'll see them. Same thing here. If you go to the Livingston Parish News website, you will see that these things are being put up. It's just that you're not necessarily seeing this because you're not hitting that like button or you're not sharing a post. Sharing a post, how important is that? How important is that to getting not only getting the Livingston Parish News out there to people that may not be familiar, but also for people to be able to see what you're posting, on a daily basis?
Well, as you mentioned, liking is a big deal, but sharing is absolutely huge. What's interesting about that is that sort of flows downward in terms of what people see. So you sharing it, the people who like to see your posts are going to see the things that you share, and it helps us. So what I like to describe the way Facebook treats things is like a pie. And they, as a business, they're only giving me a certain percentage of that pie, which is the total number of likes. The only way for me to break out what they're giving me, just as in terms of posting something and say, here it is, world, consume it, is when you like it and when you share it. That helps. I mean, it just expands, not necessarily exponentially, but at least on a linear path, it expands who all is going to see that post. And a lot of this stuff, especially the things we share on Facebook, they're local or they affect local and they're important, and we want you to know them.
Yes, I agree with that 100%. And to kind of tie into that a little further. So I'll give you an example here. A month ago on YouTube, for example, I had 80 followers, 81 subscribers, excuse me. It's different on different social media. So I had 81 subscribers. And I started kind of a campaign and I said, hey, look, if y'all are enjoying this, please, please, please share it. Please like the post, all those sort of things. Interact is what we call it, interaction. So if you do that, it's going to help me maybe build my subscribers on YouTube, which is famously the hardest platform, period, to gain subscriptions. Costs nothing. It's easy to do. It's just people have to log in to do it, and they really don't want to they really don't want to do that. Sure. So unfortunately, it's very, very hard to gain a subscribership. As of an hour ago, I looked, I have 514 subscribers. So in a month, I have gained over 400 something subscribers. That is thanks to the people that are listening and watching right now. And I'm extremely appreciative of that. But it also speaks to activity and interaction and what that can do to build your following. Like you said, we're local. Both of us, we cover local people. We podcast with local people, and so we don't have the whole world that we can appeal to, and we really don't want to. At least from my perspective, don't want to speak for you, but from my perspective, I want to appeal to local people. It doesn't do me a whole lot of good. I love people in California that watch it. I have people all over the world that watch it. You can actually look at that in the analytics, but it's the people right here in the parish and the surrounding areas. That's who I care about watching it, because that's who I'm trying to help. And so to all of you out there, just a note from both of us is like a post, share a post. You know, I see people share memes all the time, and I do it too, and they're funny, but this really helps us to continue to do this. None of this is easy. There's cost involved. There's a lot of time, extreme amount of time involved in what we do. And so got a little bug there. Yeah. Only on live TV. So from that perspective, you're really helping. You're contributing to us gaining that face. You know, maybe to put it another way, Facebook takes the handcuffs off of us a little bit. So remember to do that. Now we're going to fast forward a little bit further, and we're going to get to the point. You had a tragedy. Your dad passed away in 2015.
Yes.
Huge loss to your family. And you're an only child.
I am.
So now you're the one. And I could not imagine how difficult that was, but then at that point you get, this is your baby at that point, McHugh, right?
Right. It's, I guess you can say it was a money where your mouth is kind of thing. My dad and I fought a lot about certain things. And then actually, Melanie and I were at the same game with him. It was that first game of the 2015 season. That was the first rain out in Tiger Stadium in a long time. And he just didn't look right. And 5 weeks later, he passed of lung cancer. He was a smoker early in life. And, it was a very interesting kind of series of events after that. I came in and kind of did the same thing he did. I walked in and said, hey, y'all, we all still have a job. I've been working here now for almost 4 years. We're going to keep going. And we did. And 3 months later, roughly almost 4, a guy I considered my uncle, Mike Doty, he passed. He was the editor of the paper for many years. Combined, he and my dad had been here almost 85 years. Wow. And we kept going. We figured it out. 5 months later, it flooded. So it was a very interesting 12 months for me. But I got to say, without the support, of Melanie and of my mom, I wouldn't have made it. I wouldn't have. And my staff through that time, we just kept going and we kept going and we kept going. We just weren't going to let it stop us. We had a job to do. Like we said, our opinion of what was going on didn't really matter. Yeah. We went through all that in 2015, 2016, ended up redoing the building. And here we are. It was a very difficult year.
Yeah, I can imagine. Actually, I can't imagine. And how old were you, McHugh, when he passed away?
I was 27.
27. So for the listeners and viewers out there, put yourself in that position. So you're 27 years old. You've got what I consider a jewel of this community in this paper. This paper has been around since 1898. 1898. Over 100 years. And all of a sudden, you're pretty much thrust into the helm. Your dad, from the time he got sick, well, when you knew he was sick and to the time he passed away was not years. You weren't preparing for this for years. This was within weeks.
Yes.
Very short amount of time. So 27 years old, McHugh stepped up. Now, one thing I know about you, because I know you, is that you are a worker. A dangerous combination is a person who's smart that works hard. Sometimes there's guys out there and their brains are just unbelievable, but they're lazy. And those people suffer in leadership because of it. That's my opinion. Sports for you. You played sports in high school. You grew up watching sports. You played sports in college. I believe that contributed certainly to your work ethic. I played sports my entire life as well. Between that and the way I was raised, my work ethic was my work ethic. And I can remember times I would get so mad because my parents would make me, to earn $2 to go to a movie, I'd have to rake the yard. And like our yard had tons of leaves. And I'm like, you're kidding me? Because I had friends, their parents would just give them $2 to go to a movie. It's $2. I'm old. But those things shaped me. And as much as I hated it back then, I'm thankful for it now. I'm sure that your dad, had times he was hard on you, but who knows, now how much that shaped you and how much, I don't ever see you back down from work, and that's a compliment, and that's coming from a hard worker to a hard worker. And certain people are made certain ways. I always say I'm best. I am at my absolute best when my back is against the wall. And sometimes I will intentionally put myself there because I know that when my back's against that wall, I'm at my best. I think that's, I don't know, any psychologists out there, you can tell me why I do that, but I will. I'll put my back right against that wall because I know that that's when I'm coming out at my best. So I sense that in you. I sense that you're at your best when the pressure is on, the Tiger Woods in you, if you will. That's something that I liked about him, watching him. I was a big fan of his growing up, kind of grew up the same time frame as him, and he was just an unbelievable golfer. But what I respected about him was there was no one better under pressure. No one better. And so when you see, when I look for leaders, I look for people that perform under pressure and don't back down to it. That's something that I see you do daily. The paper in and of itself is pressure, but you've got some other pressure. You got some other things that you got going on. I don't know if I'd call them pressures, but you got some opportunities, and we're going to fast forward a little bit. And we're going to get to the job, the business that you've started now. But right before I do that, I want to get into podcasting a little bit, and I want to talk about. So there was a time in media. You're running this paper after 2016. You had these tragedies hit you. The tragedy that hit all of us after that, and you made it through. Mm-hmm. Okay, so you're moving right along, and we're kind of seeing, I'm sure you are, media change a little bit. There's some people going on YouTube that are pretty well known that are starting shows, and I'm talking people from a national level, and pretty much all of them having that. Dr. Phil has a podcast now. That's what he does. He gets on YouTube and he does these podcasts. But you can name the famous person from any industry. Everybody has a podcast now. At some point, you started doing a morning show. Yep. And you still do it every day. To this day, very, very good. If I would ask anybody, check it out. Usually McHugh's on there between 6:30 and 8, somewhere around that time. I think you kind of went away from a standard time, and
yeah. So we, my personal, the way that things were working, especially with those other opportunities. It turned out to be better for me, especially since I found out a lot of people weren't really watching it live. I get about 150, 200 people that will watch it within that time frame of me doing it. Most people watch it later in the day or on our website or YouTube when I uploaded it later. So I started waking up. I wake up about 6 o'clock. And I start either between 6:45 and 7:15, and it depends on what's going on that day. I may run until about 7:45. It may go anywhere from 15 to 30 minutes. It's been a while since I've gone 30 minutes. I try to keep it about 15 to 17 because, people are trying to get started with their day. But it's very much I guess you can say part of what helped me after all that happened was I went through the Dale Carnegie course. And one of the things they talk about is, if you've earned the right to talk about it, you can talk about it. And so I very much, of course, read everything that we publish, study it, and that's why I wake up and talk about it, because it also helps with my retention. It helps me talk about it, helps me learn it. So it's helping me just as much as I want to help people in Livingston Parish kind of understand what's going on around them.
Yeah. And look, I know people that they look for it every day, James Adam McCants, and some other people, but they really do. It is part of their routine, and I would be one of those people. Now, sometimes I don't catch it first thing because I'm chasing kids around the house with my wife and things like that, but that's just what McHugh brought up. You don't have to actually catch it live. It stays up on your Facebook page, and you can catch it any time of the day. I know James Adam McCants is really good about sharing it.
Yes.
And so that speaks to what we said earlier. Make sure you share those things. But this morning show, so it covers just like current events that are going on in the area. It's Livingston Parish based.
Yes.
Primarily what you're talking about is maybe elections that are coming up or major school events, COVID. I know for the longest time it was the COVID show.
It was.
Because
it was.
We needed the updates. And this is what you're going to get out of a Livingston Parish News morning show that you're not going to get out of maybe some other form of media broadcasting competitors, I guess would be the way to say that, is it's specific to Livingston Parish. So you're going to give all the major events in the area on there. So you also do another form of podcasting very similar to mine, and that is your where you'll have everybody from political candidates come on to you could have businesses that are doing events, or maybe they're just starting their business and they come on and they kind of promote it on your show, and you push that out. And one advantage that McHugh has over a lot of people is McHugh has good following. And so you're guaranteed that people are going to see this, as guaranteed as you can be. Of course, nothing in life is guaranteed, unfortunately. But
no, it is not.
But again, we rely on sharing and things like that to make sure that it gets out there. One of the things that I'm sure you find crazy in podcasting, I do as well, is someone will actually do a podcast and you'll put it up and they won't share it.
Yes, that's wild. It is wild to me. Yeah.
Yeah, that's crazy.
It's about you. Share it.
It's about you. Share it. Don't be embarrassed. Don't say my hair was out of place and I don't want anybody to see. You want to share that because that helps the analytics, which is what we talked about earlier. So do you have a name for that show, or is that just...
It's the Livingston Parish News Weekly Show. And I mean, we sometimes there's more than one. I try to keep it to just one. I actually recorded two before with that big race going on in the town of Livingston. 10 people running for 5 seats on the Board of Aldermen. Tomorrow I'll be sitting down with Parish President Leighton Ricks, probably for a while, to talk about the road program, which is up for renewal this fall. So a lot of political stuff going on. Yeah, I think a lot of people are going to be interested in that one.
Yeah, that's a big deal, and the whole point of watching, I would say specifically your podcast, are you're getting information that really people have to kind of hear and see to understand. You get into some pretty complicated stuff with politics and with tax renewals and things like that. And people hear tax and they're like, I'm not going to get taxed again. Forget it. I pay enough tax as it is. But some of these are necessary. Some of these are important. I'm not saying which is and which aren't. That's up to you to decide. But be educated about it. And a show like the Livingston Parish News morning show or their weekly show, they're guaranteed to educate you. But when you watch that show at the end, you're going to figure it out. You're going to at least have an opinion one way or the other. So that's what I think McHugh's after, and that's what the people that come on his show are after. So Leighton Ricks will be joining him tomorrow. Now, your podcast, successful. I find it very interesting, very successful. And then from there, McHugh, as if he doesn't do enough, there's still one, I guess, hour left in the day that you didn't have full. So you decided, I'm going to go ahead and do another business. Tell us a little bit about Southern Lighting?
Southern Lighting Solutions, yes. So the friend that I talked about earlier, we went to college together. He has been involved in the LED lighting business for over a decade. And he came to me and said, look, I'm starting to see a trend where large, I guess you could say, projects are speccing or asking for LED lighting specifically either made or assembled in the United States. In the flood, I lost my press, so I no longer printed here. So for those of you who don't know, who might be listening, I have a 13,000 square foot building off of Hatchell Lane in Denham Springs, of which post-flood we were using about 2,500 of. And, he came to me with this idea, and I said, well, I got this giant building. And we got started, and, it's been a very interesting learning experience with things like that. I like it. It was interesting. I told Miss Jennifer Parker of Rhino Electric, she asked why I got into it. And I said, because I'm ambitious. But, I was trying to get a little laugh out of her, but, a lot of it is about tech. I like the tech behind it. It's very interesting to me. I think that it is the future. A lot of this stuff doesn't cost any more than what you're doing now. It saves on electricity. It's greener. It's better lighting. A lot of these fixtures have better light beam angles. They have adjustable lumens, so you can make it dimmer or brighter. Whereas when I'm looking up here and I see these, T-juncture fluorescent panels, I need half of them in LED to get more light in this room, which of course, by the way, will benefit the podcast because the lighting will be better. So, it's one of those things where you're saving people money and you're also providing a better product. Of course, we give a 5-year warranty and things like that, but it's been very interesting working through that and, working through the newspaper. We bought a light box, and I used the camera that we used to record this to take a bunch of pictures of the fixtures, because we had to have a website. My dearly beloved made the website. It's awesome. She also helped with the catalog. We just recently put a catalog together. And so we're trying to get our American sales going. It's been difficult. We just released a bunch of stuff on social media, trying to get that presence, I guess you could say, because a lot of people are like, well, who are you?
Yeah, you need to get the word out on that. And so listeners and viewers, pay attention to this. This is a manufacturing facility. It's going to be right here in Livingston Parish. And that's a big deal. Yes. I agree with you. LED lighting is certainly the future. It's been around a little while. Everybody's probably thinking, I know what LED lighting is, and I know what LED TVs are and all those sort of things, but it's the capability that you may not be familiar with. If you're a business in Livingston Parish, and look, Farrell Calhoun, 6 months ago, we replaced all our lighting in the Denham Springs store from old fluorescence to LED. And just from the advantage of, I'm not going to have to go up there every 2 months and pull that tube out and change it and then go, good luck finding the size that you need, because for whatever reason, that building's a little older building and those fluorescents were a little harder to find. You'd have had to replace the whole thing. It's a big mess. So we just said, you know what? We're going to upgrade the lighting. Number one, because it was a paint store, and it's probably important that you have good bright lighting, but there's a lot of other advantages to LED lighting. You save money, like you just said, less energy to run the same amount of light or more, which means less electricity bill. It takes you a little while to catch up. For those math geeks out there, you're probably going to sit there and say, yeah, but you got to pay, and there's a cost to actually installing the lighting. Doesn't take that long to catch up. I mean, they use way less wattage.
And we're able to provide a better warranty. And a lot of times with an LED light, don't ever let somebody come tell you, well, your chipsets are burned out. Usually it's not the chips, unless you just, like if you went and put LED strip in these fluorescent ballasts, the chips might burn out because that's not the way it's developed. But a lot of times if you have a full fixture replacement, it's going to be your driver that goes out. And a lot of times the driver is separate from the light. You can just take it off. An electrician should be able to take it off and replace it easily. That light will continue to burn bright for a while. So there's a lot of background costs or savings, really, background savings that are inherent to LED that a lot of people don't understand. And I mean, like you said, you could, especially if you're burning these fluorescents, 8-10 hours a day, every 6 months, you got to replace them. With LED, that's not the case, and you can warranty out based on how many hours you burn them.
Yeah. I mean, and even, okay, folks, so you go to grab a bulb, think of the incandescent bulb at your house, just for example. And I don't know, back in the day, I burnt my fingers many a time because it burns out and I got to change it right now. So I go over there and I'm like, I don't need like a towel or anything. And you spin it real fast and you send your fingerprints off. Trust me, I've done it.
Oh, yeah.
So from that perspective, you don't get that with LED.
You do not. We actually have, a large spotlight that can do up to about 30,000 lumens. And it's built, a lot of these lights are built, especially the pricier ones, with aluminum heat sinks. So you're talking about 30,000 lumen spotlight. It's, if you think about 180 degrees being like a semicircle going forward, it's 165 degree beam angle. So it's almost completely wide out and no heat. I mean, you can put your hand on it.
Yeah, and that tells you how far technology's come in lighting. And now let me ask you this: who are your customers? So who would be your folks that you would necessarily want to seek out and contact and get into a partnership with?
Okay, so we also do light design. So architects, contractors, builders, electrical engineers, and facility management companies. Those are kind of our top 5 that we're really interested in partnering with. A sixth sort of side one would be we're doing some light distribution ourselves, but anybody who does light fixture distribution and sales, we'd like to talk to them about being able to save them money.
Yeah, and that's really the key. And that was what I was going to ask you. You beat me to the punch. Is can you save them money?
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah,
absolutely.
Yeah, and the caveat to that, and the nice thing that we're all going to like, because if you're watching this podcast, you care about local, is the fact that you're local, and you're there's something to be said for that. I say it all the time in the paint business. You go buy from a big box store. That's fine, but if you have a paint problem, good luck getting a rep out there to look at it.
Absolutely.
Same thing with your situation is you're a local guy. I mean, you're not hard to get in touch with. And if there is an issue, which there may never be, but if there were, you're going to go out there and you're going to check it out and see if you can figure out what's going on. Now, from a aspect of me looking on the outside in, I'm thinking, you've been writing papers. What do you know about lighting, McHugh? You researched a lot about it, didn't you? I would imagine, because paper guys do research, don't they?
Well, that was one of the scary things about it. But I was lucky to have my business partner because he's been involved for 10 to 12 years, and actually having the background that I do was helpful because I could ask him the appropriate questions and I could get and I learn something new every time I ask him about something.
Sure.
But it is interesting, and I mean we're working towards getting some products UL certified. And, we are working toward getting the manufacturing up and going here. COVID kind of messed all that up. But we have, and there's some things about management that he's learning from me. So we're able to trade a lot. He knows the product, he knows business development. I know how to run a business. Yeah. And so we're learning from each other.
Well, that's a good partnership too, because you want someone that it doesn't benefit either one of you or anybody in business out there in leadership. You can relate to this. It doesn't benefit you to be around someone that shares the same strengths.
Right.
Because there's always components that there's no one out there, I don't care who you are, that is strong in every single aspect of business or every single aspect of leadership. And that's where those folks come into play. And so sounds like you got a good partner there that would complement your strengths and you complement his. And that's important. Now,
because I will say, I am not a very good salesperson. I am not, and he is. So it is very helpful.
Sales is important.
It is. I mean,
I am a very good salesperson, FYI.
And I mean, you got to be able to run a business and you got to be focused on the numbers and things like that. But you also have to be able to sit down with somebody and say, here's how I can help you. And I mean, I can do that. My biggest issue with the sales funnel is closing. I'm bad at closing. I figured I've given you all this information. You should buy from me, and that's not how that works.
Yeah, no, unfortunately not. But, and one of the keys to that, and here's a free little tip for you, always ask for the sale. And one of the things that, I'm an old sales guy. I've been doing this a long time. And the biggest issue I see with people that struggle in sales is they never ask for it. And when you're a salesperson, you want people to ask for it. You look for that. And so there's some people that just don't, they're just not comfortable doing that. And that's good because not everybody was, made to be that. And some people are more analytical and they have other strengths and that's okay. But I want to talk a little bit more about this lighting business. You also have some other I don't know if the camera would pick them up, but you have some neat little USB ports here that they go actually into cabinets. Are these things you're going to be offering as well?
Yes. So what he's talking about, you can't see it on camera, but we have they're standard sizes, and you can drill them into cabinets or a countertop or anything like that. And they have everything from a 3-prong plug in them to USB chargers. We also have wireless fast charging with one model, and it's actually designed to fit in the holes, most standard holes for the desks you would buy at Office Depot or anything like that.
Yeah, and so what I'm going to do is I'm going to actually take some pictures before I get out of here today, and I'm going to edit that in to where as we're talking about those, you're going to actually see what we're talking about because these are really cool. If you're a cabinet shop, especially a local cabinet shop, it'd be something you definitely want to look into, possibly getting some information from McHugh on with Southern Lighting because this is going to be a hot item. It's something when I saw it that I was like, man, I would love to have this in my house. It's some really neat stuff. They got some fast chargers on here. Charge your phone up in 10 minutes. Mm-hmm. It's just unbelievable. So this is your new venture, and are you going to have a website, or do you have a website? Is it up?
We have a website. Miss Melanie did it. It's pretty awesome. It's southernlightinginc.com. We are on Facebook, Instagram, YouTube, and Twitter, and LinkedIn.
And I'm going to link all of this into the description of this video. That way you can kind of see a little bit more about what McHugh is talking about today on that. Now we probably need to go ahead and wrap up. So I do want to say one quick thing. Of course, at the end of all my episodes, I talk about something. Usually I do little fun facts or whatever. In your case, I know you're a pretty big Star Wars fan. So I'm going to just do a fun question for you.
Okay.
And your fun question would be, if you could be any Star Wars character, which one would you be?
Oh man, she's looking away. That is an interesting question. It's funny, and I'm about to nerd out hard here. But as The Mandalorian Season 2 is coming up in October, Melanie and I went back and watched Clone Wars, and we're currently in the middle of Rebels. And one of the characters that I can really appreciate, and a lot of people, you kind of miss the nuance in the movies, but I'm a big fan of Obi-Wan Kenobi. After watching that show. And, it's a guy that sticks with his principles, but he's still human. It's been interesting to watch them with that show kind of pull out some nuance from that character that you didn't really get to pick up in the movie. So I would say Obi-Wan Kenobi. Now, on the forward facing, I've got She has gotten me a Darth Vader keychain. I have a Darth Vader figurine. I'm a Vader fan. I do like Vader. I think he's a great villain. I also think if you haven't watched the Clone Wars, it really pulls out a lot of, makes you sympathize with him a little bit, but in the end, he is Darth Vader. But Obi-Wan Kenobi is the answer to you.
Obi-Wan Kenobi. And I'll tell you, I'm a huge Star Wars fan as well. Actually, this will kind of tell you how old I am. I saw the first Star Wars in the theater.
Oh, okay.
I used to have the very first issue of Star Wars comic book.
Really?
Yes, I did. Yes, I did. It was beat up. It was, but I had it for a long time. Lost it in the flood, unfortunately.
God. Oh,
yeah, I'll never forget that, finding that on the ground. But it wasn't worth a whole lot. It was really beat up. But I'll tell you mine.
Okay.
And mine would absolutely, and this will be of no surprise to anybody that really, really knows me, Han Solo, no doubt about it, is my favorite character in Star Wars. Love him. And I would definitely say, in my opinion, I'll throw another question on you just because we're both going to geek out. Best Star Wars movie. Which one would you say was the best of the movies? Which episode?
Oh, it's got to be. Does it have to be one of the 9? Because
yes, one of the 9.
One of the 9.
Yeah, because nobody's familiar, unless you're really deep into it.
I was going to say Rogue One. Of the 9, it's either going to be Empire or Force Awakens, and I would probably go with Force Awakens.
Really?
Yeah.
Surprising to me. I'm going with, actually, opposite of all of that, I'm going with Return of the Jedi.
Okay.
Loved Return of the Jedi.
That's a good one.
But they were all good. All of them, in my opinion, were good. But I don't know, for whatever reason, the first 3 were, to me, and probably because of the time frame in which I grew up.
Sure.
I mean, I was in the thick of that, man. I can remember having a Millennium Falcon, toy and all those sorts of things. So, it was great talking to you. We could go on another 4 hours, but Melanie probably throw a piece of ice at me or something. I don't know. She might stab me with the ice pick if she had one handy. So I'm going to go ahead and wrap this up. We could definitely go further.
Yeah, we could.
So I appreciate all y'all watching. I do want to say that, as we discussed earlier, I'm up to 514 people on subscribers on YouTube. Thank you so much for that. Please, please, please keep showing your support. We're supporting local leaders here, right here in Livingston Parish, and we want to continue to do that. Please check out my website at paintpodcast.com. You can check out all my social media, Facebook, Instagram, and YouTube. Just search for local leaders. I tried it today on Google and it pops up anything you'd want to know about me and then more. My name is Jim Chapman. I am reminding you to please keep leading, and we will see you next time. SportNCenter in Denham Springs is your one-stop shop for team sports equipment, school uniforms, and promotional goods. Conveniently located next to the Antique Village since 1977. SportNCenter, your business means everything to them because your name rides on everything they do.